Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tanyaradzwa Mandara of the In Details podcast. And today I'm joined by my friend. What's up, bro?
Madim Dara. What
do you say?
I'll be good, man. I'm alright. I'm doing alright. I go by the name Nyasha, Francis Xavier Samakomva. And well, today our topic, or what we're talking about, we're talking about the issue to do with the relevance. How relevant is our traditional cultural practice, or like our traditional cultural practices and values from back then? How relevant are they to the Zimbabwean youth today? So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a pretty hot topic from what I've picked up. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one.
So let's go straight into it. So what do you think are the typical practice and values in question, especially for us youth into day living of the way we're just living? What are those practices and norms that we say we are not typically following through? I think, can you just
maybe I'll broaden it. I'll just take a broad approach to it. But mostly we're looking at issues that have to do with social life, basically like our social structures, because you have issues to do with family, right? You have issues to do with your community, like close-knit community, and issues to do with just general human interaction at large, even outside of your close-knit community. Issues to do with religion and spirituality. You have your issues that have to do with relationships with family members, that is nuclear family. You have issues that have to do with extended family.
Yes. Your
cousins and them, and your aunties and your uncles. And you also have issues that have to do with your community. You have issues that they go even beyond your community, even like in the workspace and schools. And I think most importantly, issues that have to do with peer-to-peer interaction, like as bunch of boys gonna bunch girls here, I think that is more of another pressing issue as well.
So what are the actual current norms on the ground that you can say these current norms are being affected mostly in general?
Okay, all right. So like more of an example. All right, so I'll give you an example. Issues that have to do with general conduct in the house, like in the household, the family, the nuclear family. You'll see that back then you had your how do I put it? You had your fixed gender roles. You had fixed family roles within the family. You knew that the father was the head of the house, as the man of the house, or the ranking authority, followed by the mother, who's more or less deputy. And then you have children. They come in by hierarchy of birth naturally. But now, if you look at it, these things have changed, where you have situations where we don't really acknowledge, or we don't recognize those structures as much as people used to do back then, where at times we even find you have people who fail to acknowledge the authority of the father, maybe based on issues to do with maybe financial issues. Your father might not be the breadwinner of the house.
Okay, so let me ask this. How about equality? People nowadays, they are saying it's 50-50, especially the mother and the father. So mother and father, they are at 50-50. There's no father at top, mother at here, and then the children like that. What's your take to say about the 50-50? Because it seems like nowadays it's always 50-50. Mother is bringing something on the table. Father is bringing something. They will be like, no more hierarchy. Everyone is just at par.
The way I see it, I think, it's an interesting take, because to be fair, that approach, the 50-50 approach, from a standpoint where you're looking at issues to do with providing, right? You're looking at issues to do with provision. We look at the current economic situation, not only in Zimbabwe, but on a global level. A single income does not suffice as it used to do back then to uphold a household. a single income is not enough to take care of everything that is needed to be taken care of in the house, be it issues to do with food, taking kids to school. You look at my wage structures, right? You look at how much people are making, and then you look at the living expense. So in that situation, where from that viewpoint, there's nothing wrong with having a 50-50 situation because you're trying to support your family. But I think now the disparity comes when you have it transcends into the power dynamic in the house. Now where it's more of who makes more.
Because there's always a problem if the female part or female counterparts are the one who are making more money. So if the mother is making more money than the father, it seems like now the mother is the one who have a loyalty for controlling that household as compared to the father. What's your take about that?
Well, it's natural, I'd like to believe.
Because the one who have more money is the one who have more control.
Yes, I'd like to believe so, because you determine how people live in the house. It's now what people eat, what people get to wear, where you get to live, and all those kind of things. It's all dependent on money, because we live in a time where everything is dependent on currency. But there are certain issues that don't necessarily have to go in that direction, from what I think, because you can't then say you fail to respect your father simply because he does not make as much as your mother does, or does not make a good living at that time.
Okay.
Or he does not make money, as good money, for you to then feel like you then can give him some respect. Because I think that's where the issue is here. Like when it comes to the topic that we have today, that your father does not necessarily have to earn a certain amount of money for him to command respect in the house. As the father of the house, he's the father of the house. He deserves that respect regardless of the amount of money that he makes.
All right, so let me just clarify this. Back then, are you saying people, regardless of what you're making, either the mother is making a lot of money than the father, or the father is making a lot of money? And nowadays, because it seems like nowadays people will be like, okay, you are the one who's just making, so I think I'll give much respect to the one who's just giving a lot of input in the family. Nowadays, and back then, what was the difference? Maybe you can clarify with
I think
what was the difference? Like back then, people do they really give that respect, or it's like things are just transitioning, they're just transiting to something which is just I don't even know.
I think it also goes back to the fact that back then, because of the way society was functioning, most of the time you had the mother as the matron of the house.
Right.
She's usually at home doing whatever it is that is being done in the house, be it the cooking, the cleaning. The household was held by the mother. And then you have the patriarch of the family. You have the father figure of the family. He's the one who's going to work. Because also back then you need to realize that women were not in a position to go to work most of the time. I think it's also another big issue when you look at it, like looking back at social history. Women were not really in the decision-making spaces. They were not in the money-making process. They were not even in the voting process. I think it's only till the 60s, the 70s, when women were allowed to vote in America, if I'm not mistaken. So back then, it was already like at a legislative level. Like it goes beyond the household. It goes even into like politics and everything. So if the structure is already like that, I think it has a trickle down effect into the household. So even in the house, because already you are used to the notion that the men are up there, followed by the women, followed by the children.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just get straight into this question. What do you think is the nature of the difference of what used to be there and what is now in terms of the culture, especially affecting us as youth? The difference, how we are just acknowledging it, how we are just saving it, because it seems like everything is just changing. Everything is changing. So how do you think the nature of the difference from onset?
Honestly, it's dependent on which side you're on. So you have your youth, right? And you look at this transition, this paradigm shift in culture, this cultural dilution, this adaptation of the modern culture, or the liberal culture, so to speak. For the majority of the youth, it's a welcome change. For them, it's something that is good, because for some reason, for most people, they find it to be something that is favorable. From what I think, it has to do with the viewpoint that you're taking it from, because this shift is moving from the traditional that or rather our fathers and our grandfathers were used to, and we're moving into a more liberal space.
All right.
Which is more of a hybrid culture, so to speak, where you have aspects of our traditions and aspects of whatever adapted culture that we have. As youth, most youth, from what I've observed, most of us, people of our generation, maybe some and those that are coming, especially those that are coming after us.
Yeah,
I'm at 2K. Yeah. You notice that they prefer that the shift goes on in the direction that it's going.
And they really love what they want. Like I think they are just directing the culture to the way they really want themselves.
They prefer this adulteration of our tradition way more than they prefer, or way more than they have that preference for the preservation of what is our culture, so to speak. So if you're in demographic yapana, and I think unongoshtofila tayamazi is I really don't think it's necessary anymore. But then when you also look at the older generation, Anagogo, Anasekuru, and some of Anamdara, because this shift started maybe even during the time when our parents were still kids. So maybe they're also part of that that dynamic, or that demographic rather, that is also, torn in between whether we should keep the tradition or we should do away with the tradition, if you get what I'm saying.
So let me just show you that. More specific, let's talk about spiritually and traditionally, how it is being transformed, the culture, spiritual and traditional.
Oh, yeah, I mean, issues to do with spirituality, issues to do with religion. That one it's always been a contentious issue, especially with I've noticed even with parents, when you have parents that grew up in a church, the ones that we call like your traditional Orthodox churches, Dutch, the Roman Catholic, the Anglican, all the churches, so to speak. And then you get to a point where, as you're growing, maybe you're now in your teens, and you find maybe you're more drawn towards a more new age type of church, right? Protestant, or you're more drawn towards the Pentecostal churches, or when you make that shift, I've noticed for most people it happens as a matter of personal conviction. It's like maybe with church you're not really feeling that, that spiritual vibe. You're not getting that spiritual fulfillment that you're supposed to get out of prayer, but then maybe you find delivery in it by someone else. Maybe it's Madungwe, or it's Makandiwa, or whoever, who are lesser from the part of that old tradition. Exactly. You find it to be more appealing to you, and you feel maybe not on matamo panema guitar. We want to see now where the shift comes in, or the disparity of when you then go to moms inini anchakwanzi kwenda nimi kuchurch nekuti ndakwenda ku maybe inenge chinzikana nzi New Life Hope Ministries or something like that. Then of course chaos in some cases chaos ensues, because now it's makutera to masuit to masoti bedzisa and whatever and whatnot. No church dzedu dzatakakura nadzo kudara, so already it becomes an issue. Only it that modern, because even when we do speak of like my churches like the Catholic Church, Anglican Church, that's not part of our tradition. But it seems to have become part of our tradition, because it's been there for so long that even those that are supposed to hold tradition for us take it as tradition. Then you now move from the issues to do with non-Zimbabwean culture. Catholicism is from Rome, and Anglican Church is from the UK. Then we look at Isusu Kunok, we believe in Mudzimu, or at least let me say that's the culture.
That's the culture.
That's the culture. Because if I say we believe, it's a bit of the culture. Then Isusu, we believe in my traditions. Before anything else came to our shores, to our borders, as Zimbabweans, purely as Zimbabweans, we had our ways, mashikiro, vadzimu, quite kwamabira, and everything. That was part of our spiritual well-being, or spiritual life. Now, what seems to have happened is with the introduction of the foreign religions, there was a demonization, and I always speak about this. There was a demonization of our culture as it was, and best believe. You mentioned the words that I just mentioned, Bidzimu, Mashikiro, whatever, to anyone who grew up in a Western church, so to speak. Already, to them, you are speaking of Zimzakaipa.
Because Zimwagaipa.
Zimwagashata, Mashikiro
Shakaipa. They revert to another religion, which they think is the actual. The other thing outside that thing is not even relevant.
Exactly. So it was put to the side as something that is completely unacceptable. So even Nukangonzi, Babikwa 7 days, just once Babikwa 7 days, even if it's not for any event or for any festivity, just the fact that Babikwa do rainbow, something like that, Makuta Mashavi or Makuta Mashikiro or whatever. That's the adulteration. For me, I take it to be the bad part of that shift.
All right.
It's the bad part of that shift from our tradition to a new age type of living. So now, when you look at the relevance of it, most of our youth, most of the young people in Zimbabwe, none of them. There are very few number, if any, have an understanding, not even an appreciation, just an understanding of our tradition in that line when it has to do with spirituality and religion. So, because for us already, when we hear religion, we hear spirituality, the first thing we see is a white Jesus with long hair and a white robe that you've seen in Passion of Christ or Pama picture. You see, so. When it comes to that issue, I think it's losing its relevance, but I also feel it's coming back slowly, although it's coming back in a misinterpreted way. And stuff like that. But in an attempt to bring back culture, I think it has been brought back in the wrong sense.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let me just get straight into it. The other key issue I think we have to tackle family tradition and legacy, because nowadays unogona na baby utozoti toni ana mtupo wako mdara kuti mwese mutori ana umba kuti mwese mutori ana shumba. Even people they don't even care about that identity of themselves. You be like, yo, because I still remember back then ana mom's story zvinotoyera kuti udanana kuina. I don't even know, is it relevant for umba na umba wanga chidanana kanoti. And the worst part, there was this other girl who I asked unoyere because I don't even know. So imagine a person nearly 21 years old, she's saying she don't even know mtupo wake. So what's your take about it? Because it seemed like people back then don't really take that serious, and nowadays it seems like it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even count they don't even take it seriously. Like it's like.
Yeah, I think when you look at it that way, it's a very relevant point because we see these things happening a lot. You have a lot of people who are dating people of the same totem. You have people who are even marrying people of the same totem, and for most people our age, I think the issue is we don't really take it that seriously because you don't understand the significance of mutupo. To most people, it's just it's your totem is just imoka yonzi yaunodaidzwa nayo kana vanhu vachiomberana makadi imofu makadi ishumba, but they don't really understand the significance of it. And I think maybe it warrants that people should also look into the history of nyaya dzemtupo, because now panogumisira pane ma-issues ekuti traditionally whoever has the same totem as you is your relative.
Yes.
So if it's from your father's side, awatomdara kana mudhara wako achiera mofu kasanga nemera mofu either ndimukoma sekuru ndimudhara on that front, kana ari wechikadzi ndavatete ihanzvadzi yako. On your mother's side, it's the same thing. Anyone who has your mother's totem originally, automatically, vato moms. And if it's a man, vato sekur. But now, it for most people, it's antosangana nemunhu. But for them, it doesn't click to them that you afford them that respect, because my totems were not just given. It's not like you wake up and you choose and I feel like ndoera shiri or something like that. And no, it's the myadzema lineages. Most of these people, they have history that dates way back, even back to mama issues, mama times. Kusati kwakutombopfekwa hembe anditi nguchiri kupfekwa nembe and whatever. And if you track those my lineages, you end up seeing kuti there is a trend, or there is a traceable bloodline. So in other words, yes, padno ukama unenge uripo. But for most people now, they ask questions, and for some they'll say and they go on with their lives.
I think with that point, let's switch out over to Ibatanidza with how the cultural shift from back then and now concerning about relationship, marriage, ECT, especially for younger generation like us.
Issues to do with dating.
Issues to do with dating, marriage, relationships.
The dating space is chaotic. I know I'm part of that age group, but personally, I'll take it to be something. I'll take it to be a chaotic situation when you look at issues to do with my cultural values, my traditional norms, and as kudara back then, it was taboo for you to feel so comfortable to even hug your girlfriend's mom when you're still just dating.
Kissing.
No. We're not talking about your girlfriend here. We're talking about your girlfriend's parents. Right? Culturally, you're only supposed to meet those people when things are getting serious.
Yes.
But now, because we've been watching so many teen movies from the States and, my chick flick and whatever, you get to meet your potential ambuya on the first date when you're meeting your girlfriend. And everything seems to be okay. Exactly. So, but on the flip side of it, I also feel like it helps foster like healthy relationships. Like if that foregoing of tradition, you could see or you are not saying
so I saying the cultural shift of especially concerning about relationships and marriage from back then to what we are just doing now, it's far much better. It's no,
it's not.
It's hammering what you've just said. It's hammering a hair
on that front, and on that front where we speak of issues to do with what like dating. I think problem is it blurs boundaries.
All right.
It blurs boundaries because you end up seeing people failing to respect that father-in-law, son-in-law dynamic. You end up behaving as if you're brothers, or you end up treating him as if he's your peer. Even if your girlfriend's father is Arwechnik, that dynamic still needs to be respected, because it brings up there's certain issues that have to do with my family structures, and with our tradition tinoziva kuti tezvara vanoumberwa, tezvara vano is afforded that respect. You know, funny thing, like I was talking to my mom the other day, and we were speaking of how now I can go and even like just go and have lunch with my girlfriend's mom, and even when I meet her, I'm not going to tell her a hug or something like that. Back then, my mom was explaining to me was Mkwash Achfamam Road, you know, those my dust path on Mkwash Achfamam Road, Ambuya Wachiboko. You want to make sure kuti he goes onto this side of the road. Ambuya wanusaro over this side of the road.
All right.
And Mamuka say move might say on opposite sides of the road. Because that has always been one very sacred and very delicate dynamic, that relationship ya Ambuya and Mkwash. But now you feel kuti Mkwash wangu not open a bedroom Ambuya exactly, you know, that's what I was saying kuti the issue of boundaries
is being diluted.
I will not lie to you, we have a very, 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 very chaotic situation right there. Because even now, you even have your friends coming over and they fail to respect boundaries. It's even bedroom, you don't just go in willingly.
And the issue of, let's say, parents are even allowing a boy. You have a daughter as mother, as a father, you have a daughter, but you're allowing a boy to have a sleepover at your house. Here in Zimbabwe, like, is it okay? I'm just asking as a person who's just trying to understand what was the culture back then. Were people allowed to do such things? Like it was taboo, just to allow.
To be honest, it still is. Because in as much as we might say we're taking the liberal approach where you're allowing children to be, you know, sexually liberated and whatnot, I think it creates an environment that puts children at risk. To be honest, it puts children at risk. Because if we're talking of my young adults, 21, 22, 23, it's a different issue. Because now these guys are independent, but also when you're still living at home, you also need to understand that this is not your house. You don't do as you wish. And also culturally, you do not get into that space where you're sleeping at your mandem's house or at your yebi's place before that process of marriage, right? Even, and with this one now, I can say it even goes back even into Western culture, where when you had a child out of wedlock, having a child before you get married, that's where the term bastard comes from. And even back then, it was serious to the point where your son could not hold your last name. You've watched Game of Thrones. You had Jon Snow, the alleged bastard of Ned Stark. And because he was believed to be a Stark, but he could not be called a Stark because he was not the child of Mr. and Mrs. Stark. So because of that, you realize what the institution of marriage means for most cultures. And I think on our part, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves where we now get into the space of even living with mwana wevanhu usina kunozivisa kuti mwana wevanhu ndindinaye usina kubvisa rora. And I saw this in college so much because people had semester marriage. You understand this because we witnessed this when we were still in college.
Yes,
you realize you have a girlfriend that you have, and when you're looking for accommodation, you just look for a room to rent that's just taking two people. you just say to your landlord, Mandara, inini ndongo but Maria room yes, then that forgoes for you to. I will try to tell my roommate. You split. You're splitting bills halfway with your girlfriend. You're staying with your girlfriend 3 months straight. You don't even know where she comes from. You don't know who her family is. You don't even have a slight idea of her family background apart from what she chose to tell you. And the vice versa is true. A girl will stay with a guy for a good 3 months with only having met him and probably maybe 2 of his best friends. Apart from that, she does not know any of your family.
Talk about the social climate and activities. How they just transcend like everything.
You know what? For this one, it's a very touchy topic. It's a very touchy topic, especially when we're looking at social dynamics. Of course, yes, it's really structured, but the issue is when you speak of social spaces, this is where we're not just interacting as my peers. Just it's kind of team 21, 22, it's about team 21, 22. We have a lot of things that are going on. A lot of things are changing. Because look, there's a lot of things that were taken to be for boys. A lot of things that were taken to be for girls. Right. Back then, things to do with kurukwamsoro, things to do with the wearing of piercing jewelry.
Yes.
Your earrings, your lip rings, your nose rings. In some places, yes, the plaiting of hair is not gender specific. But in Zimbabwe, the issues I think the only acceptable hairstyle that is not an afro or a comb back or a suda or a fade or a haircut basically for men were dreadlocks, because there was heavy influence, Rasta influence, especially time when Anabuju Banton were coming up and Rastafarianism was becoming a part of Zimbabwe. But apart from that, that's a fact.
So it's a taboo to see somebody
You see, yeah, and so there's certain things that are meant for boys, and you understand between the drinking of beer and it's the drinking of beer of lagers, my beers, my heavy beers. The drinking of things like beer was meant for men. The drinking at a bar and the kubawa. The kubawa was basically set to be a space for men, and even up until now, there's that language already. It has a hidden meaning. Basically, what you're saying is you wiped a hoe because you found her in what? You found her in a space where decent women are not supposed to be found. You see, and you also have things like even smoking of cigarettes. You've got things to do like certain sports, the playing of football, the playing of games, like pool, the playing of darts. It was taken to be the premise of men. And then you have things to do with issues to do like with kubiga jago. Of course, but the funny thing is, you look at it, most of the best chefs, from my experience, are men. But it is said that cooking is the premise of women. So I think it also then touches gender roles as well. But when you're looking at the social space, because now, in as much as we might want to say we are now free thinkers, we believe in things like gender equality and liberal thinking and free spaces and what men can do, women can do. To be fair, you can take a survey and ask any guy if you'd want to marry a girl that is still who goes out to the club. And anaenda ku club because I don't know she's doing the most. If you've got a girl who's going to the club, if you would want to marry a girl who smokes, if you'd want to marry a girl who drinks like a gent, Because basically, we all know that women are meant to be the one glass of wine type of drinkers.
But totona mukadzi akabata label.
Akabata court, Castle, the Madison, and so now I stood there out after Nokpa Snooker. So you see now, because of those social spaces, and also there's certain social spaces like, look, you have men who are now going into women's spaces as well. And there's now a transcension of boundaries. We are blurring so many lines. Some lines can be blurred, I understand. You can have a social event where you have both men and women in a decent type of environment. But we've all been to the club. As long as the lights are now blue and not clear, something is going down. When the lights are flickering, you know, I'm a one. So now, because the reason why people then they do not want to marry anyone who's been in that space, especially if it's a lady, is because either you've been there or you are well aware of what goes on.
Yes,
in
you
those
really
places.
know what really a transcenter in those places.
Yeah, I mean, for some of these things we cannot say them because per YouTube, but we would want to speak of these things every night. Whenever there's something going on, whether it's a club, whatever, something happens. Ningi akazo browa anikwane mskane munu or ningi akazo ngatiza kuma or whatever. And now it becomes an issue. These social spaces, there are a lot of things that people know to closer
Boundaries.
And I think also maybe it comes down to the issue of when we talk about being liberal, we are now adopting the issues that have to do with sexuality, where now you then say it's acceptable for you to be gay, it's acceptable for you to be a lesbian, it's acceptable for you to be transgender, to be bi, to be my letters are but you see now it's an agenda that is being pushed, and that agenda it's a strong one. It's a strong one, and in as much as people don't want to acknowledge it, that movement, just as the one that when black people were fighting for racism, this one as well, it's a political one. It's a political movement.
Let's not go there. So
it's a political movement, not to speak of a certain political party or a certain political movement, but the reason why I say it's political is because the reason when people fight for these rights, so to speak, they are pushing for change of legislation, basically. But governance. Let's go back to the issues of society, choice. We all know this as a Zimbabwean community. It's something that we do not expect, or it's something that is not accepted. And a man marries a woman is married to a man. Then anything other than that is really wrong. But now you also have men who prefer to be with other men, right? You've got guys who are gay, but they now feel comfortable to be in women's spaces. Instead of meeting with the gents at the pub, he'd rather go to a picnic with the girls. Right. You also have girls who feel very masculine, and they feel they can take or they can occupy a men's space. And you see those ladies with the gents at the pub, beer and whatever, and you really see them in pink or in skirts or the predominantly female colors.
What's really influencing that change from the culture? Because China change from black to white or from white to black. There's something which will be
there's a driving force.
Something which will be pushing. So let's talk about
there's a driving force behind these changes. I think the first one, in as much as people don't like talking about it, is colonialism. Colonialism. That's when cross-pollination and adulteration of cultures started, right? Or at least I'd like to believe so. Pioneering. You have your Europeans coming to Africa. You've got Americans going wherever. People were not going them out of their natural space. That's when these things started. So there's an adaptation. Certain things even when it goes culturally, when it comes to wearing of clothes. You have women at the time. Kudara koko, women were not really people who were supposed to be wearing trousers. Trousers were meant for men, dresses were meant for women, and did it. But then, munotanga ku experience those changes, and then you start having people vanogudi vakuchinja vakuadopta what people have come with from wherever they are as a norm, right? And then you have issues to do with like when you traveling the transcontinental travel. You travel to the States, maybe you go there, you're there for school, you come back, or you go there, maybe you're there for 6-7 years. A very significant part of you becomes American. People don't want to accept that, but it's a fact. A very significant part of you becomes American when you move to America. A very significant part of you becomes Chinese when you move to China. Because you adopt the way and the culture of what is going on there. Not necessarily because you want to, but because it's an adaptation. It's adaptation so that you may survive and thrive in that new environment. Because ukawaya ku Zimbabwe, as wherever you're coming from, and then you don't pick up me 1 or 2 Shona words, you find it difficult. Maybe if you're coming from an English-speaking country, you are at an advantage because the majority of Zimbabweans can understand basic English and speak basic English.
So can we say when you just let's say you have what you're saying, you've traveled outside, you come back, can you say you now you are a lost person because the way you're just dressing is now different from the traditions that we know? You're now wearing palm shirts and they'll be like, nah, that's not the way we used to dress here. The way you speak, you were just saying, yo, what's up, everything will be like different. So I would say with the that change,
I think you'd be lost if you picked up that new way of life and then forgot or then dropped what you learned from back.
So you're saying you have to find a common ground between what you just brought up from where you were and what you have now, right? Like
exactly. Like, don't forget where you came from.
All right.
So that's why you see, for some people, they cannot go for more than a year out of diaspora without having to travel home. They always make it a point that Christmas kupikita, kumusha and easy. And then you also have people who then say, the moment they leave Zim, right? So now I think that's where the difference is you can go there, maybe it's for work or it's for school, whatever. There's no problem in that because it has happened. Whatever. You might even marry a white woman, or you might marry a white man, or whoever. It doesn't necessarily have to then change you to the point where you drop everything that has to do with your roots. Because I think it's an issue to do with roots. Back home, where you from?
How about abandonment of practice? There were a lot of things that you were doing. The fact that you have just maybe you have moved, or maybe you are like, for example,
exposed to something new. Yeah.
Because I still remember there's this guy of mine, like this friend of mine, will say, "Me, Tanya, I don't believe Mugurora," because I think there's an exchange of it's transactional. It's like something like that. Why? Remember when he was exposed in an environment where especially outside, people don't get married. White people don't get married. They'll be like, okay, a white wedding, like, by the way,
what you need is your documentation, and so it's done.
How about that abandonment of practices? You just lost everything. Things that you used to do, they no longer mirrors no more. You'll be like having a new thought of view. Everything that you have, you have a new thought of view.
I think it becomes an issue of, as we get older, you become more independent, especially like when it comes to way of thinking. And because humans, we are learning creatures, we learn, right, from exposure and whatever. So I suppose maybe out of discernment, you then can draw preferences. Could say, I think this is what I prefer. This is what I prefer. So now that's when you see maybe it all goes back to then say isusu kumshako edu aticharowe makuwa, right? And yet kurowa makuwa is an essential part of Shona culture. And for some people they'll say kuti isusu atisina basa nenyaya dzekuroora stereki, munhu anogona kutoenda asangobvisirwa, because we don't really believe in that transactional nature of the process. So I think when it comes to what people then choose to drop and what people choose to retain, it's an issue to do with preferences.
So talking about choices and liberties, is there anything wrong about being very liberal?
I don't think there's anything wrong with being liberal. It's not completely wrong, it's not completely right. There's always need for 50-50 balance. And there's nothing wrong with being liberal. Like when we're talking about issues to do with social spaces, like as a liberal woman, you can choose to say, I want to drink alcohol, and it's but of course culturally they're not really meant to be drinking in that social manner. Usually it's wine at home,
all right?
Right? But culturally it's now wine, but maybe it was kumba vakadzi vanga vasingateeri ndari, zvekuteera ndari kunzi sekuru vafamba pano nekutauni ukuku vazodzoka kwakuedza vakatakurana nedora rabva kundari.
So are we saying that us as youth are being given that freedom, that space kutambarara? So is it good? Is it bad?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with the liberties.
Because the moment you are just given that opportunity, that freedom, that's where you just think that maybe this thing it's good. Whereas with the culture, it'll be like nah. But because now you have freedom, you can now.
I think it's your personal responsibility, like on a personal level. It's a personal responsibility for you to be aware. Situational awareness. You need to be aware, right? Maybe the rhetoric now is it's fine for us to do A, B, C, but also where I'm from, we consider A, B, C to be okay or to be not good or whatever. So that's where you then decide, alright, fine. But because it's not problem. Then maybe that's when people strike a balance and then say, I don't drink at home, or I don't drink in the presence of my parents, or I make sure that they don't find out. But then you also choose to be responsible with your drinking.
Those I will say, I drink occasionally. I
think that's a matter of choice.
Okay,
it's a matter of choice.
Concerning about choice, is it okay to be very conservative? Like
to be conservative. Most people say it is really archaic. That's what Shagasara is really ancient, because a very good example is there's a girl who works for my mom in my mom's shop. Since birth, she's never put on a pair of trousers. From what she says and from what the family says, even Kukatonora say, I think it's utazite, I think a skate. Through and through, izvo zvichando chikurovaga angatowanze majuzi nemasocks nemajombo, but mutemo dresses and skirts only. She chooses to do that as an observation of the religion that she's from or the culture that she was raised in. But then if you're being conservative in that manner, I don't think there's anything wrong, because you're not affecting anyone, and to be quite fair, you're not offending anyone. And she's also one of those people who then says, I will not even hug a guy until the cows have come home. So for her it's an issue of self-preservation and purity, or at least she says. So I think when you're being conservative and you're making personal choices. Really, honestly, if it's not affecting too many people or people that are around you, it's not much of an issue. I think being conservative now becomes when you want to impose your conservative views on everyone else. You want to impose your conservative views on everyone else. Where you then say, mumba mangu nini, akuna mskana, pinda mba after 6. Akuna mskana anobuda akapfeka trousers. Akuna mskana anobuda mbani embe inoratidza cleavage. Akuna mkomana anofanira kuita basa rechikadzi or whatever. Like, you then go back to being so hardline traditional that you then begin to impose and affect other people's liberties. Where you then say now, because is mabasa kwani ese complete. Ndinoona mabasa rekunoshanda mkitchen kuMiko's hotel. Then you say kuti ndina mwana mkomana anoswera chitamba nemugoti. Ndotogara padeni otonzi beta uswere uri pamba. Panekuti unoita end living. So I think when it comes to that now, it becomes an issue.
Mandara Mandara wadiko